Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. All right, welcome in. Before we jump in today, I have a quick announcement. Earlier this week, we passed the 4-year mark of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. The show is officially 4 years old. So thank you for those of you who have been a listener for all 4 years. Thank you for those of you who have just joined recently. You've kind of been listening off and on. If you would take just a couple minutes and give us a review on Spotify and Apple, it really does help with the show's growth. And I would really appreciate that. We hit our show continues to grow, and so which is awesome, right? It's a lot of podcasts don't make it very long, and so this is something that has been a project of mine now for quite a while, and I've really enjoyed doing this. We've had quite a few guests on over the years. The past year was a lot of solo episodes. I do plan on doing a lot more interviews here in 2026. But thank you guys so much. I truly do mean that for listening. I know there's tons of shows you could be listening to. I know there's tons of audiobooks and music and all sorts of things, pulling for your attention, with your kids, work, family life, all that stuff. And so I really do appreciate that you have spent, even if it's just a small part of your week, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to listen. But let's go ahead and dive in today. Now, if you have been listening for a while, you've probably heard me talk about the Chiefs. I am from Kansas City, grew up a Chiefs fan. I'm actually going to the Chiefs and Chargers game this weekend with my wife, and so I'm pretty pumped about that. I've gone to quite a few Chiefs games in my life, obviously growing up there, and my wife and I have gone to games together, but we've never actually gone to a game since we've been married, which is kind of funny. We've had tickets a couple times, and it ended up not working out, this is the first time in our marriage, it's been, I think we were in college the last time we went to a game together, and so I'm really excited. Obviously the season isn't going as well as I would have hoped, but this has been the greatest 7-8 years of Chiefs football I've ever witnessed, and so I can't complain too much. But I was watching the game the other day, and they were playing the Houston Texans, and the Chiefs were down quite a few offensive linemen. There were a lot of things just not going their way. A lot of drop passes and stuff. And at the end of the game, Patrick Mahomes had statistically one of his worst games he'd ever played. He had 3 interceptions. I think he had 9 straight incompletions or interceptions in a row, and it was just a really poor game statistically. Now, as I was watching the game, I remember thinking to myself, I was like, Mahomes, obviously, the national media, if you're not a Chiefs fan, if they beat up on your team a lot, obviously, I get why you're not rooting for him, right? But he's incredible to watch, and I believe he does make everybody around him better, and he's obviously not immune to criticism. But one thing I've really watched with him, especially the past couple of seasons, probably 2 or 3 years, is that our team is always, we tend to have a lot of drops. We had 7 drops. The Chiefs have 7 drops on, I think they were officially credited for like 5 or 6 of them, but I counted 7. I counted 7 drops, and so obviously that makes it very hard, for the offense to click. And so there was a couple 4th and 1 calls where he threw the ball, and they were both dropped, and then there's a couple interceptions that were off the hands that were dropped. And if you look at Mahomes' statistics, it looks like he played a very poor game, but he was making a lot of the right decisions there, right? He was hitting receivers. He cannot control the receiver, right? Obviously, ball placement is a thing, right? Timing, things like that. But as a quarterback, when you're throwing the ball, you're once you let go of the ball, the outcome is out of your hands. And I promise I'm not just going to talk about the Chiefs the entire time here, but this is what happens, with fitness, right? When we do our workouts, when we get our steps in, when our nutrition is on point, we expect a certain outcome, and it doesn't always happen, right? Some days we feel like we can do everything right, and we stand on the scale the next morning and it didn't budge, or some days it goes up, right? And we controlled what we could, but then the rest of it is out of our hands. And I remember watching, maybe if you're a basketball fan, this one will resonate a little bit more with you. But I remember watching this video. Of Steph Curry. I don't even remember who it was, but it was just some guy he was teaching how to shoot a jump shot or something, and he kept missing the shot. And Steph gave him some pointers on how to grip the ball and certain things like that. And one thing he said to him that really stuck out to me was that he said, "I don't even care if you make it right now. Just practice the form, just practice shooting it." And I thought that was genius. I've coached basketball in the past. I've coached other sports and stuff, obviously, personal training, coaching clients and things like that. And that is one thing that, I think is super important. When I was coaching basketball, at one point I was coaching middle school girls, and we would teach them the offense, we would teach them the plays. And obviously the execution, we want to execute, but we have to be in the right spot first, and we have to make the right pass first. And so a lot of times when I was coaching, I didn't care if the pass was completed. I care that you're making the right pass, right? What Mahomes the other day, are you making the right read? Are you throwing to the correct receiver, the guy who is open? And when you make the right play, you can fix up, you can clean up the other things later. And so when it comes to you, are you doing the things that are going to lead results? Are you working out consistently? Are you following a plan that's going to allow you to progress, to keep getting stronger? Is your nutrition on point? Is what you are putting in your body going to serve you long term? Are you moving enough throughout the day? Is your environment set up? What kind of food are you bringing into your house? What are you purchasing from the grocery store? What's your home environment look like? Who's your support system? All of these things matter. They all affect how well you're going to be able to execute it, how well you're going to be able to stick with it. If something gets thrown off track, are you going to be able to persist? Are you going to be able to be resilient? All of these things matter. We look at these things in a vacuum. In a football game, we look at the scoreboard, right? That's what we measure by. And if you're trying to lose weight, you look at the scale. If you're trying to build strength, you're looking at the weights each week. We have these scoreboards, but they don't tell the full picture. And unless you have somebody to guide you, or something to cross-reference it with, then we don't really know what's actually going on, right? Another example, I watched the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons the other night. The Atlanta Falcons had 19 penalties in the game. They did a lot of things wrong. But they ended up winning the game 29-28, I believe it was. They had a 3rd and 28 in the fourth quarter, and then a 4th and 14, and they somehow, went down the field, kicked a field goal, won the game. And so on paper, they did what they needed to. But you wouldn't do that long term. You could go eat McDonald's every single day, and yeah, you can have it every once in a while. But if you have it every single meal, there may be days you stand on the scale and you lose weight. That doesn't mean what you were doing was the correct thing. We know there's a more than likely way to get an outcome, and when we practice that consistently, we know we're going to get there. Chances are teams that commit 19 penalties in the game aren't going to win every Sunday, or in this case, it was a Thursday. They're not going to win every week. More often than not, they're probably going to lose. If you're not tracking your food, you're not working out, you have no idea how much you're moving throughout the week, chances are you're not going to see the results that you want. And so the scoreboard matters. Yes, it like we measure things, we measure, athletes by how many championships they've won. We measure musicians, how many Grammys, how many awards they win. We always have these outside things that can track who's the most accomplished, but it doesn't mean there's not other ways to measure performance, right? Nobody knows what you're doing. Nobody sees you read your kids a bedtime story. Nobody sees you get up in the morning and help them get ready for school, making their lunch. There's not really a scoreboard for that. But just because there isn't a scoreboard doesn't mean you're not doing the right thing. It doesn't mean you're not being a good dad. There's more than one way to get there, but we know that when we have, when we spend quality time with our kids, right? When we spend time, with them away from our phones, when we're being intentional with them, it's probably going to lead to a better relationship with our wife. If we're setting time throughout the week to have conversations, to have to just spend some time, quality time, one-on-one, to go on dates, things like that, chances are you're going to have a better relationship. And again, we're going to bring it back to fitness here, right? If you're going to the store, you're planning, you're prepping meals, you're trying to get enough protein in, you're eating fruits and vegetables every single day, you're strength training, you're progressing in your workouts, and you're moving enough, you're going through walks, you're minimizing your stress, you're getting good sleep in, there's a good chance you're going to see great results long term. But short term, crazy things can happen, right? You can do a lot of things wrong and you can win a football game with 19 penalties. You can hit your receivers in the hands every single play and you could still end the game with 7 drops, right? Some of these things, when we're doing the right thing, when we're strength training, we're eating good food, we can still get sick. We can still overeat. We can still, not reach our monthly or quarterly or yearly goals. But we know that when we do the right things, when we put in the effort, when we put in the work, long term, it's going to pay off. And so just because something, isn't working in the short term, yes, it's extremely important to evaluate, what's going on, right? If you're not getting the results that you want, yes, we need to tweak it. We need to look back. We need to be reflective, but you also have to give it enough time, right? If you're doing the right things, chances are it's going to take some time, right? When you're doing the wrong things, it's also going to take some time for you to know, right? Jocko Willink, has a great quote that says, "Both failure and success are slow processes." That when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the beginning stages, you may not know if what you're doing is leading you closer to where you want to go or further down the road. That's why it's so important to have somebody who's steps, a couple steps ahead of you, maybe a coach who can help you, or a friend who's gone on a similar journey. If you don't know where you're going or how to get there, chances are you're not going to end up there, right? So you got to have somebody that's going to help you. But once you have a plan, once you know that, hey, this is solid, this is something I can stick to, and you do that consistently, once you give it enough time, you're going to see results. And so don't give up too soon. Just because things may not be working out the way you want it to doesn't mean you're not on the right path.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out and I'd love to hear from you.